It is the start of TAW Live. Neil Atkinson with Belinder, Bhati, Adam Smith and John Gibbons. Andy Heaton producing, which means he's responsible for everything. And we are going to be talking about international football to start with before looking ahead to Liverpool's game against Watford. I can't wait to watch the Reds again. Not least Belinder, because I am absolutely done in with these internationals. They've managed to move themselves from 2 till 3. Not all of our players have finished yet. There's a chance that Fabinho and Alisson Becker could somehow see action tonight. It feels as though everybody is having a big laugh at our expense. Those of us who love club football these days, international breaks seemingly don't end. No,
they don't. They just go on and on. And obviously, we just spoke before, but yeah, I've been at a breaking point myself. There's just too many games. It's not enough games that I care about. Like, as I said, I went to the cinema last weekend and found that spending my time, watching a movie on the Saturday night rather than watching whoever was playing like international football was just far more enjoyable.
What you go and see?
James Bond.
Any good? Long, I believe.
Long, but to be fair, it's well paced. I would say that. Like, it didn't feel like it dragged. So yeah, that was for my mum. She wanted to go. So yeah. But we're talking Liverpool here, not the movies.
Well, no, I think Adam's about to steam in 2-footed on Bond, but we'll come back to you in a second, Belinda. You just hang on for dear life. So what is to be done with this, John, at this point? It's interesting the players are speaking out. And that, to me, is Courtois is one example. But I feel as though this is going to become a recurring theme. They're almost going to take a relay race on this now, the players. And I think that it's going to become a situation where almost every 3 months or so, at least every 3 months or so, one high-profile player is going to be saying something.
Yeah, I agree. And it's not hard to find sort of... baddies in football, really, because it feels like someone's about to behave badly at any point and within increasingly in their own self-interest. But what's noticeable to me on sort of all of this really is that there's very little talk of, oh, they're being paid this much or that much. They can just sort of get on with it. That seems to have sort of, not disappeared, but in this instance, it's not sort of being brought up really. We have to wait till they talk about the mental health or something for that to sort of get launched in the face. But within this sort of, instance, it seems to me that everyone's pretty much decided that the international clubs are taking the piss. We talked a little bit before about the move from 2 to 3 games, and you mentioned that briefly, Neil, and also just the scheduling. Like, I'm sure Brazil are playing after us this time. Do you know what I mean? It's like we're Saturday lunchtime and they're playing Saturday night, and it's like and it just feels like it's the disregard, it's the arrogance, it's the we'll do what we want. We've got them, and I think sometimes you can push, and as I say, that's not to say that the clubs are sort of always behaving brilliantly and things.
There are no angels, but there can be bigger demons.
Yeah, and at the moment, the biggest demons, as I say, are the international federations individually, and FIFA are doing sort of very little about it. And Courtois said it itself; they're only interested in sort of lining their own pockets and it's sort of footballers. And I think it does feel like there's a bit of a change in tide really, and there's less people going, well, I'm not just going to get on with it anymore, and I'm going to speak out. It's great that Courtois did. I hope others follow. I hope there can be some sort of people get together. It doesn't have to be necessarily be a formal union, but just a WhatsApp group of captains for the start. They sorted loads last year in the Premier League. Maybe internationally they can box this.
We carry no candles here for Manchester City, Adam. But the idea of Fernand Torres having been injured in a game and then playing another game, carrying that injury whilst playing international football. I mean, Guardiola will give his press conference tomorrow, and I really hope he doesn't hold back because you very much shouldn't. It could be a Liverpool player that happens to next time. It's happened to Liverpool players in the past. There was all the stuff around the treatment of Sturridge by Hodgson to go back. There's Thiago in the world in the Euros as well. You just end up in this situation where the players' welfare has got to be absolutely paramount, and then the next thing that's got to be paramount is the interests of club over country, especially during the club season. By all means, maybe play a bit fast and loose if you want in June, but do not be playing fast and loose with club footballers in October, please.
Yeah, and I think it's really important actually not to conflate how a lot of us feel about international football and the mistakes that are being made around international football, because I despise international football because I don't have a country that I follow. I hate the breaks. The breaks are placed idiotically, especially at this, because there's like 3 breaks now, but before the start of the season, Christmas, and then nothing till March. I mean, it's insane the way they do it. I hate it all, but that's not why the players are getting annoyed. Thibaut Courtois isn't there going, I'm really annoyed at this because I can't be arsed playing for Belgium, the shite. He's getting annoyed because he doesn't want to have to play 3 games in a week. He doesn't think it's right that players are having to play again and again and again. And international managers have to be a little bit more responsible with the players they've got at their disposal. The Torres thing it's ridiculous. It's utterly ridiculous. And as you say, I hope Guardiola goes in 2-footed over it, because it's just a nonsense that he's picked up an injury and then been played. And if he had done that, if Guardiola had done that, then everyone would be going, what's going on? Why is he allowed to be manager still if he's not putting the players' welfare at the top of his list? It shouldn't be a better excuse for international manager just because it's their couple of weeks with them. They're not allowed to, ride these players like dead horses. What's the phrase? That's not a phrase, but the phrase I'm trying to think of. Flogging. That's the one. Yeah, they shouldn't be allowed to flog them like a dead horse. It's just not right. And the players, as John's kind of touched on, it has to be, I think, the players that start to turn around and do something about it, because FIFA and UEFA, as we know, will just keep on taking the mickey and as long as they can get away with it.
The problem is, Belinder, is that there are no goodies, as John sort of framed it before. Everyone's always about to be awful, and everyone always acts within self-interest. But there's a point, I think, there's a breaking point. I thought Courtois was interesting about this. If you take the wider idea, that trust is a difficult thing, and it's a thing that you can very easily lose, but it's a difficult thing to get back. And increasingly, and I'm going all the way back to when, for instance, there was talk of some players in the Premier League either taking a pay cut or not taking a pay cut during the pandemic. Trust, I think, played a big part in that. Trust for the ownership, trust that that any ownerships right the way through the league are good or bad or indifferent, but the idea of trusting them to do the right thing, full stop. Trust seems to be in really short supply in football between clubs, from players to clubs, from players to governing bodies to clubs. And there's lots of good reason for that. But someone, somewhere, somehow has got to start acting, firstly, in the interests of footballers, but also, secondly, in the interest of actually building trust.
Yeah, exactly that. I mean, I remember watching Alisson's interview just after the last international break. He didn't get to go, and it actually seemed quite worrying that he was having to talk in an interview about sort of, I just have to trust that the club are, doing what's best for me, and they're trying to do things and put things in place. And it felt really bad. And then when there was that rumor coming about that Brazil or FIFA were going to punish the clubs for not letting the players go, and it's like, well, how has someone like Alisson done anything wrong in that situation? He's only been doing what he's been told to do. He's employed by this club, and he's told he can't go, and now he's going to get punished for it. It's just ridiculous. They're trying to. It's like 3 different people trying to pull these. Those toys when you're a kid, the stretchy men.
Stretch Armstrong.
That's it. Yeah, it feels like they're all just trying to stretch them. Like, oh, we'll have an arm, we'll have a leg, we'll have this, and it's just ridiculous. And like you said, it comes down to the trust, and fundamentally comes down to money as well, right? And greed. So where is this gonna be the turning point? Is it gonna take a player getting a lifelong injury, like a career-ending injury in one of these international breaks for someone to take notice of what these players want and what they need?
I think on it, John, I think there's little things that could be done. It wouldn't take much effort. If, for instance, and I wouldn't be averse to it, because I think that, and I suspect that Jurgen Klopp wouldn't be averse to it either if it was the idea that it was impacting everyone. But if, for instance, the Premier League said, we're concerned about players having too much burden put on them, what we'll say is that no player can play more than 34 games worth of minutes in a season. No outfield player can play more than 34 games worth of minutes in a season, and that impacts everybody. So there's not the idea that so that has to hit. It hits Ben Mee as much as it hits Virgil van Dijk, if you sort of see what I mean. But that they said, no, we're going to do this because someone's got to take the lead. And again, this idea, the other thing that when we talk about no trust, the other thing I think that there is a problem within football is because football has become this, well, and perhaps always has been, this environment where no one ever wants to give ground because they don't want to show weakness. So you end up in a situation where everybody's just constantly doubling down on whatever terrible idea they've had over and over, because they don't want to be the ones who turn around and go, actually, we've got to try and solve this problem, because they've got this concern, which comes back to trust. If we give them an inch, they'll take a mile.
Yeah, I mean, that's it. I think, it would be nice to have some sort of rule, like you say, around sort of how many minutes maybe players could play. But I just can't see anyone agreeing to it, because they'll think, well, why should we limit ours? Yeah, and that's where it sort of comes to. And I think, to be fair, football clubs are sort of getting better and better at looking after players, and I think you know, because they know that, you know, it's a long season. But I think even international football, it's like, well, we've only got him a week, so it's almost like they don't care. There's the Arsene Wenger quote, isn't it, where you said, you know, you give away your Porsche and it comes back, you know, sort of bashed up and no petrol and things like that. And it sort of, it does feel like that. I mean, that's what Pep Guardiola must feel like with Ferran Torres at the moment, that, you know, they've just handed over a prized asset. Yeah, he's not playing every week, but he's still an expensive asset over to Spain, and they've basically just run him in the ground and then you know, shoved him back and said, well, there you are, you deal with that. And you know, it isn't right, and it isn't right on the footballers, and I think the footballers, you know, are in a tough position because, you know, like you said before, or someone said before, they do enjoy playing international football. It's a source of pride for them. You know, they're not all like Adam Smith. Do you know what I mean? You know, a lot of them sort of are sort of into it, really, and for them, you know. So I don't think it's fair sometimes when fans say, oh, they should just retire, do you know what I mean? Or we should just make them, you know, retire. You know, it's not going to sort of work like that. You know, they've got a lot of pride, but that pride is taken advantage of, I think, a little bit, really. And also, you know, I think there's times where you think, well, I don't want to say, you know, won't play or it won't go because it won't sort of get in the squad next time and things like that. And it feels like, you know, they've almost sort of got a gun to the head sometimes that they sort of have to get on with it. And as I say, it just doesn't sit right with me at all.
We're not far away, Belinder, from some people starting to talk about the amount of money that they earn and also act as though they don't earn a living. I think that will happen. I'd expect that to come out across some form of talk radio in the next few weeks. We can probably pick the pundits, to be honest with you, like a sweep, who will decide that they're going to go heavy on it. Never did them any harm, etc., etc. That's the bit where the players go on. What?
I was just laughing. It's always the ones who can't walk anymore, isn't it?
Yeah. That's the point at which the players will need protecting, because I do think that this is a front that is going to open up. I think Courtois made the first move, and I think that everyone will feel it's in their interests to amplify the opposition to this, especially people who pay money for football, for huge contracts, to say, no, we cannot afford for the goose to lay the golden eggs to lay slightly fewer eggs. Belinda?
Yeah, no, it's the issue with football, isn't it? Everything's sort of tribal and everything sort of gets into just, you know, meaningless discussions and arguments about things, and the actual issue at hand sort of gets lost. Yeah, sorry, I lost my chain of thought.
It's okay. It's one where, Adam, where I think that, as I say, I think that the next phase of this is that there is going to be demonstrable people making some sort of point, because it grabs attention, it'll get a few clicks here and there, and that's what's coming next. Yeah,
and I think it has to be, really, because I just don't see what else the solution is, really, because you know, as I touched on before, FIFA and UEFA, and to be fair, you know, all of the other sort of governing bodies like CONMEBOL, etc., have proven time and again that they do not care about the players, and they do, you know, all they're interested in is their own self-interest. Why are we playing a World Cup in Qatar in December? That's got nothing to do with the players. That is entirely down to FIFA's own best interests and their own money making, etc., right, and trying to please entirely the wrong people. So it has to get to the point where the players are going to have to say, we've got to start trying to make a point here, because nobody's listening. So it's going to have to be basically on them that do it. Because
when they make that point, Adam, my thing was, when they make that point, what will happen is lots of people will say, but you earn 300 grand a week.
Of course, but yeah, look, players earn stupid amounts of money. If you don't accept that, don't watch football. It's you know, it's like players. The second you start thinking about how much money players earn, your head's going to go. You can't, you know, do you know what I mean? You can't, like, once you go down that road, you're in Weirdoville, and there's no coming back from it, because it's crazy. You know, we're talking about what, Ronaldo on £500,000 a week. £500,000 a week. I probably won't earn £500,000 in my lifetime. He's on it a week. You can't think of that. And the people who are going to say that are kind of, they're conflating two. I've used that word twice now. I'm getting excited about it. But they're conflating two different arguments. That's not the conversation. The conversation is about their health. And believe it or not, as far as I'm aware, earning £500,000 a week, or £50,000 a week, or £10,000 a week doesn't mean that you are invincible in terms of your health. The amount of money somebody earns is irrelevant to what they're being able to put their body through. Irrelevant.
Ian McPhee's made the point, we schedule the international break for 4 weeks at the end of the season. They play all the matches. Then the issue is that different confederations play the games that have seasons that run at different times. There is no standardisation across the season. And also why people don't like that is the idea that you don't get to spread the games out, which means some players will be injured and some players won't be, which is quietly ironic, Ian, given what's happened to Manchester City's Fernand Torres. Do some other comments before we go into the mini break. Stevie Ray says, up the Reds from Long Island. Hope we can come back to Carragher's Pub for a show in New York soon. So do we, Stevie. But ultimately, I think it's still going to remain difficult to get in and out of the United States. If you want to have a word, write to your local congressman. Mike McCumsky asks if Jota is out. Is Jota out? Mike says. Mike, listen to the second part of the show where we're going to tell you that he's not. He's trained with the players. All's absolutely fine. Simon Thomas is moving house tomorrow. He could do with Anfield Wrap encouragement. He's knee-deep in boxes, John. Have you got any tips for Simon at this, frankly, very difficult time?
Nothing worse, but Tour Player is your friend. The AnfieldWrap.com/subscribe with all the content that you want to get you through.
There's a lot to listen to on there, isn't there, John?
Yeah, there is a heck of a lot.
Is there like some sort of ASMR thing where we do soothing noises for house movers? Have we not reached that level yet?
Someone write that down. Adam Smith could do that. I think he's got a nice built studio there for it.
Yeah.
Next thing for Adam.
Everything will be fine. Everything will be fine. It will all get into the van. Paul asks if Manny is available. Do we know? Paul, you're putting the fear of God into me. Is the talk he might not be available? Where's that come from? Jack Mather writes, he wants to say the NBA has a growing regular season problem with star players sent out for rest, but he's done it as two messages, and the way the second one's ended, it looks like the NBA has a growl, which I'm sure they absolutely very much do. What else do we have going all the way through here? Have you lads heard the Fabinho quotes on Rafinha? Belinda, you're good at transfers. Have you heard the Fabinho quotes on Rafinha?
Yeah, he's just said something like that he heard that, you know, maybe Rafinha was going to move in the summer and he thought Liverpool would be interested. And I think that's the extent of it. And I think Deco has come out as Rafinha's agent talking about it. And Deco was part of the team who was involved in the Liverpool transfer with Fabinho. So I don't know. They're just talking.
Does Deco make things happen? Is Deco a person who makes things happen? Belinda?
On and off the pitch?
Well, I like to believe so, just for like my childhood and what he did on the pitch. Yeah. I would like to believe he's still in a realm where he's making things happen in football. So
can't keep him off the action.
He has a lovely face, an absolutely lovely face. Rafinha can't be bothered with him, doesn't score enough goals. Richard Pointer, what about if players were not paid for play for the country, like Mbappe said? Surely their health would be more important. Most players do actually donate a lot of the money that they get from international football. Frankly, they just don't talk about it very much, and no one publicises it to go from there. Daniel Middleman slanders,
give all their money away, don't they?
Slanders Jake Humphrey. With a lot of Jake Humphrey chat on Talking Reds this morning, John.
Good to know.
We decided we took the Twitter thread thing about him that said he texted into Radio 1 to say keep the bangers coming, and we went from there with that. What else do we have? Yeah, Anna Roberts says the 6 years of Klopp pod was great. It was indeed. She almost didn't listen because what else is there to say? It turns out a lot. If you haven't listened, you should. And what we do with this, then this goes out to the podcast as well. So in a minute, I'm going to stop talking, and then people will get the inserts that go out to the podcast. What two of them are about this week is the LFC Foundation, and the other thing also has, is it Harriet?
I spoke to Mona.
John speaking to Mona about all of the nutritionist work that she's done at Liverpool and her book as well. How was Mona?
Yeah, she was lovely. Really, really nice. I said I was from the Anfield Wrap and she got very excited.
Did she?
Yeah. She went, oh, brilliant. I was like, I bet you didn't do that for Paul Ghost.
Which is a real shame. I was excited to see Paul Ghost.
I was pleased to see Paul Ghost. I'm sure Mona was as well.
Did you learn anything from Mona?
A little bit, yeah. I asked her, it's coming up, but I asked her about...
not for the live people, John. I'm going to encourage the live people to chase it back round.
Absolutely. But basically, I said, we play five-a-side at 6 o'clock after work, and how would she structure my day food-wise? And she told me.
Did she tell you?
Yeah.
Did she say, eat a great big lasagna an hour before kickoff like Jordan once did?
No, it was the opposite of what she said.
Well, hey, Jordan, we live and learn.
I didn't tell her about Jordan throwing up at the side of the pitch, but now wish I had.
Yeah. I say you live and learn. He probably didn't need Mona to tell them that was a bad thing. So all of those inserts are available if you listen to this as a podcast. They're going to start now, and then we'll be straight back round. So they've started now. And now we're straight back round. It's Neil Atkinson with John Gibbons, Adam Smith, and Belinda Bhati to talk and look ahead to Liverpool's upcoming game against Watford. And Belinda, it's a strange one, this, in that there's a lot of... I'm sure... we would probably all have liked Xisco to still be the manager of Watford. It wasn't going well for them. They were really badly structured. They were giving away an unbelievable amount of chances. They let slip 2.52 expected goals via stats bomb to Newcastle United, of all people. a few weeks back. This was not a team that was defending at all well. They brought Claudio Ranieri in. I'm sure we're all concerned about a bit of new manager bounce, but my thing about new manager bounce is the manager needs to have had at least some time to work with the players. A lot of them will have been off on international duty, and I suspect he'll be working out what new manager bounce looks like before this one.
Yeah, to be fair, like I was trying to work out like how many of their players actually go to international break, and yeah, will that new manager bounce come into effect? I mean, apart from Saul, obviously I don't know the Watford squad too deep to work out the numbers, but yeah, there's a lot of things going into this game that feel like it will make it a bogey game and have a bogey result, away from home 12:30, because our players have only just got back as well.
Yeah.
As we know, our Brazilians aren't even back, so. Maybe like the football gods will look down on us, and the fact that there's so many things pointing towards a bogey result will mean it's an easy 3-0. But yeah, let's hope.
Well, I think on that, John, I think that part of all of that, I actually think will help keep Liverpool honest, and also the fact that this is a ground, and there aren't actually that many of them. Certainly in front of a crowd, where last time Liverpool played on it, they got beat. Like, the one thing I cannot see is Liverpool turning up with any degree of complacency. That's my main takeaway from this. In every single level, they know it's the first game of the weekend. They know they don't want to be handing advantages out to rivals. They know it's a new manager. They know it'll be a partisan crowd. But they also know the last time they went to Vicarage Road in front of a partisan crowd, they didn't just get beat, they got tonked.
Yeah, I think that's fair, Neil, and I think they'll be talking about that, and I'm sure there'll be a reminder of what can happen if they get the sort of tails up, what can happen if as you say, the crowd get behind them, and what can happen if we give Sarr far too much space, because that's what he did on that day, and he just sort of legged through everyone. So I think they'll be up for it. I think they'll be conscious as well, as a team of that sort of City game, last time, and not starting that brave enough, as Klopp said, and then sort of how we sort of finished the game as well. So they might be talking about that a little bit as well, in terms of like making sure we got the right approach from the off, really. But I think the new manager thing, the Liverpool squad, need to ignore sort of best they can. Obviously we sort of talk about it because you're thinking about how the game's going to go. But I think from a Liverpool point of view, it'll be all about sort of getting our attitude right, really, all about sort of, as you say, looking at that game a couple of years ago and approaching it much, much differently. But also, making sure that we're approaching ourselves in the right way and attacking it, because Watford will be there to be beaten. I think the manager sort of lost his job. It's still sort of the same squad, with the sort of same issues. And
they're very old, There's one of the things I discovered today doing some research. There's a lot of lads who could play in this game who are in the 30s.
Yeah, and I don't think, look, I could end up looking silly, but I don't think Ranieri's the kind of manager who's got that much bounce in him, really. I think he's a tactical manager. He's someone who's, he's more going to analyse what they've got and find a better way for them to play. I think he's a good manager. Obviously, he's a Premier League winner, but I think he's a thinker, really. And I don't think he's one who's going to suddenly come in and tell them to be running a lot more and this and that, or sort of necessarily even looking to sort of shore them up. I think it'll be. I think he might have even written this one off, to be honest with you, and it'll be using it to sort of have a little bit of a look and then looking from there.
I think using it to have a little bit of looks very, very possible, Adam. The thing to say, though, is that Liverpool, they do have these strangenesses. I'm not quite sure on a few levels around the squad. In that, what I mean by that isn't, I'm not. It's the sort of game where I would like there to be some Fabinho, and that's my point. I'd like there to be Alisson Becker. I'm not against Henderson at all playing A in the game, but also B at number 6 for a lot of games, including a lot of almost, in a lot of inverted commas senses, bigger games than this. Like, for instance, you tell me Henderson's going to start at the base of the midfield going to Goodison, I'd be absolutely sanguine about it and think, yeah, he'll be fine there, and that'll all come together quite nicely. My thing with this one is, because they may look to sort of go the aerial routes, look to go really, really direct, may well look to sort of turn us around and play into spaces a little bit. I would like there to be Fabinho and Alisson, and that's not me disparaging anyone who's going to come in for either of them or play in their positions.
I agree with you completely, but on the flip side of that, there is the fact that actually the fact that we're without Fabinho and the fact that we're without Alisson, and almost certainly it's going to end up being Kelleher starting, means that there is a little bit of a backs against the wall thing that the players might have to kind of think about, in a sort of, look, we need to protect him. So they might be a bit more switched on at in a defensive sense than maybe they would have been if Alisson was starting, if Fabinho was in the DM role. I think maybe that it sort of plays in our favour a little bit, and everybody's going to kind of, work together to protect each other. Be galvanised. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly the right word. Be galvanized and protect each other more than they would be doing if they were, if the main players were there. On the new manager bounce thing, I've said on wildcards that came out today that I did some research on new manager bounce, and it's not really a thing. About 30% of managers win their first game when they go in the middle of the season. But Andrew Beasley's released a piece today which basically says, apart from when Liverpool play them, in which case they normally win. So it's sort of new manager bounce isn't real, but Liverpool do their best to get those managers bouncing, but Liverpool basically turn up with a bloody trampoline to help these fellas. So hopefully that also Klopp will be aware of that and work hard to stop it being a thing.
The nature of the international break, the nature of the fixture, and where we are in general for the season, and against Watford, Belinder, the manager's got a bit of a selection headache, I actually think, in the middle of the park. And I mean, he's got a big decision to make, because he'll have Henderson at 6. We can just sort of go with that. And then all of Keita, Chamberlain, Milner and Jones will feel like they should be starting this one for completely different reasons in a lot of ways, I think. But I think all 4 of them would be of the view that they should be in there to start this one, especially with Atletico Madrid also coming up on Tuesday.
Yeah, I think that between Jones and Keita, you have to assess who's come back like fresher from internationals, things like that. Jones obviously playing, under 21 football, so I don't know how. I assume that's equally as intensive as senior international football. So I think you've just got to manage between them, who of them two can come in, and then Milner and Ox. Yeah, is Trent? You assume Trent can go into right back, so you need Milner probably in this game in midfield. Just again, maybe some leadership in that midfield. You're missing Fabinho. Henderson's going to be. Then I don't know if he's got the legs. Okay, he's probably got the legs, because at the moment Ox is looking like he's running like a headless chicken, even if he's got the legs. So yeah, definitely selection. But yeah, I think the 2 keys are Jones and Keita, because you've got to look ahead to Atletico and then United after. So yeah.
That is, I mean, both of those are on the horizon, John. And for me, that's Scott McCauley's put there. If Ox doesn't start this game, can't see where he gets his next league start. And that's a pretty valid point, frankly. And but then the flip side of that is Milner will probably have these sorts of games with a big red ring around it in this calendar, coming back off international breaks himself, thinking, well, I'd like some of them in midfield as well, please.
Yeah, I think so. I think, you can talk about who's going where on international, but there is quite a few of them who haven't travelled at all. Firmino is another one, of course, who doesn't sort of get picked, but is sort of fit. And Milner and Chamberlain. So he will be tempted to use both of them, but he might sort of, think of sort of hold one back. I'll be surprised if Keita starts, just because he's played 3 games in the international break, sort of. So it's quite sort of heavy workload for him. So I'll be sort of surprised. So Curtis Jones is an interesting one in that he leaves internationals early because of a bit of an injury, but then apparently he's okay. So I think it's an injury he took, and they were actually a bit more sensible with him than the Spanish were Ferran Torres. But I think, he looks like he's sort of going to be okay, but they might just sort of hold him back a little bit. So yeah, I agree with Scott. I think, or whoever it was, sorry. Yeah, it was Scott, sorry. Scott McCauley. I got confused by another Scott jumping in, making it a Scott fest in the comments. That I think, he probably will sort of go for him on this one, and then maybe look for someone like Curtis Jones or a Keita as a swap, really, and someone who could sort of come in for them and give them sort of half an hour in this one. But they'll have their eye on Atletico as well.
I think this is one, I'll come back to on it, John, where I think it is, there's almost, as I say, the options are interesting. It's the idea that he's got options. People will feel as though he doesn't, but he very much does for this Watford away game. Even with a couple, with 1 absence and 2 injuries in the middle of the park, he's still got 5 to choose from. And because we expect Henderson starts at 6, it's 2 from 4.
Yeah, and Curtis Jones's versatility gives him options more as well. So I think last year you'd be thinking, well, you have to play Milner because you'd only want one of Jones, Chamberlain and Keita, in that team, really. And if it was 2 of them, then you'd be sort of a bit too attacking for an away. But Curtis's newfound maturity, and Curtis is a bit, he's played 6 this season, hasn't he? Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily be throwing him in 6 in this one, but he has played that more Wijnaldum role sort of really successfully over the last sort of 6 months, carrying over the 2 seasons. And so I think the fact that he is doing that would give you that option. I think Keita as well, to be fair, has done some decent work a little bit deeper in this game as well. So I think you can, you've got an option to leave Milner out of this one and wait for him for Tuesday if you wanted to. But I do think you'll pick Milner.
In the comments there, Sanchez says that Watford have got a few injuries as well. Watford doesn't have a few injuries. Watford have an unbelievable injury list, but they also have a mad squad list where they're full of lads that you've never heard of before, who can just appear at the drop of a hat. They've lost Dini, Atibu, Gray, Cabaselli won't be available for them. Quina won't be available for them. Sirialta, who's been playing centre-half for them, won't be available for them. In goal will be Ben Foster. He is 40. Cathcart will play. He is 33. Kuka will probably play. He is 34, going on 35. This is a side that is Musa Sissoko, you forget, 32. This is a side of pretty old footballers.
Quite interesting Dennis chat. He's made the most fouls in the league this season.
Has he?
What's he up to?
I love it when that happens. There was a period of time there was a long run where year after year in the early 2000s, the most fouled and the player who had committed the most fouls in the league at the same time as Kevin Davies.
He's
every season
all he's doing is fouls.
Just running into people and appealing, and the referee's got to give it one way or the other. And that's the way in which it would work.
Yeah, Dennis has got the most yellow cards as well, so his fouls are, he's not messing around with them either.
Significant fouls.
Yeah. Not just niggles.
He's absolutely fouling properly. I am, therefore, very much of the view, Belinder, this is a game Liverpool have to win. If you rank the games at the start of the season, 1 to 38, most difficulty to least difficulty, we're talking here about a game that's 32 downwards, if we all need to be honest about it. It might be a bit of a slog. They'll be determined to show for the new manager, but they've got some aging legs in there, and Liverpool, this really is a game that Liverpool should be winning.
100%. Yeah, there's no room for error, or there is room for error, but it's not that much room for error. And I think something I worked out a few years ago is these Champions League group games, they're actually the ones that feel like a bit of a night off. Like, you can afford to drop points in some of the group games.
Divock Origi will start in Madrid. That's my current prediction, that Divock Origi will start in Madrid. For this reason that you're saying, because it's fine to get a draw in Madrid. You go and play Madrid, you can get a draw, so you put Divock up front for an hour, he runs around, he occupies defenders, he runs into people, does a little bit of Emmanuel Denise work, he does all of that, and then, so that's your point, is that you can actually afford to draw or lose in Madrid, but you've got to beat Watford.
Exactly. The points count more in the league at this stage where we're at now. So I think that especially with sort of how we didn't get the big wins against either Chelsea or City at home, they could potentially look like, massive points dropped in terms of the context of winning the league, right? So you can't afford any more, just like Brentford's, you need to actually come out now and this is actually a good opportunity to have a good run of form. We've got 3 massive games now. 2 of the 3 games where, if you go back to just before the pandemic all kicked off, there was 2 awful results against Atletico and Watford. This group of players were involved in those results. This is now an opportunity to say, well, look, show that we've got through this blip now. This is a chance now. We're going to kickstart and let this be the run of a good patch of form going into the Christmas.
What do you think you'll do then on selection, just very quickly, Belinder? What do you expect from the midfield? What do you expect from the front? I think it'll be the first choice back for Kelleher in goal. So Henderson +2. Who do you think the 2 will be? And which of Firmino and Jota do you think misses out?
I think Defo, Milner will start, and I think he'll go Jones, just because I think he'll be fresher and he'll be, you just don't want to take any risk with Keita going into the big games. And we're coming back off the Guinea games, and then up front, Firmino, just because he'll have the internationals to do training as well. So
Adam, what do you think?
Yeah, I think I generally agree with that. I don't know about Keita. I've got a long-standing theory that Keita doesn't fly well. And whenever he flies anywhere, whether it's to a Champions League match for us or off somewhere for Guinea, that he gets an injury quite soon after. And it's mental because he's only got small legs compared to people who have to sit, and he's probably, I imagine him, first class or whatever with loads of leg room. But there's something happens to Keita, so either he doesn't start or he starts and then is immediately injured, during the match or something. So I think Firmino, Klopp seems to like playing the players who he's had a long time to work with. So when it's an international break and loads of the lads are sticking around, he tends to want to play those players in the game. So I'd be very surprised if the likes of Milner, Firmino, etc., who didn't go away on international duty, Matip, don't start the game. That's kind of, so my take is he'll go with the bare structure of the players he's been working with for the week, or the fortnight, I should say, and then kind of put other players around depending on how fit they seem to be coming back from international duty.
And you're expecting a Liverpool win?
Yes, I am. I think we can get quite caught up in the idea of all the new manager and all this and all that. Reality is they're rubbish, and we really should be beating them. And we get a bit scared of these things, and obviously they're losing 3-0 to them there last time, but they're rubbish. And Claudio Ranieri is I don't think he's a great manager. I think he's a decent manager, but I think he's going to take his time to really put a stamp on them. I still think they should go. I still think they'll go down this season. So I'll put it this way: if we don't win, I'll be really annoyed for the rest of the weekend. And I know the lads don't like to annoy me.
And it's an early start. John, they should win. And what do you think he does in midfield and attack?
Yeah, I think the way I think he'll go for me, someone top tip said he was looking sharp in the inside Anfield the videos on YouTube, so that's really good news. So for me, Salah, Mane, I think he'll go. I think he'll go Henderson, Milner, and I think he'll pick Chamberlain. I think he'll pick Chamberlain and maybe hold Curtis Jones back. Obviously, Fabinho comes back for that Atletico game as well. I think he'll go with that. And then the back four we think sort of picks itself. And then obviously be Kelleher in goal, who we haven't mentioned as well. But it's a big game for Kelleher. But maybe I haven't mentioned him because we've got loads of confidence in him.
Just tons.
Cork's finest. So yeah, so I think that's what I go for, and yeah, I think they'll win. I think that I've been buoyed by this Watford injury news, and
Craig Cathcart, John.
I was just going to say him. I watched him for the Green and White Army in the week, and not great. I'll be honest with you. At his age, his best years are behind him. That's me being generous.
And they weren't that good. He's 33. Craig Cathcart, ladies and gentlemen. You're going to get a lot of it over the course of the weekend. Steve in the comments says 1-0 Salah, horrible game, but job will be done. I think horrible game feels about right. I think there'll be a point on about 35 where we'll all be livid with each other, and then there'll be a point on about 60 where we'll be wondering why we were all so livid with each other, because that is the experience at times of supporting Liverpool in games like this. Thank you very much indeed to Belinder, to John, and to Adam, and to all the people who were in the middle section of that show. So many, and too many of them to mention. We will run the cast list names over and over and over again so that you can pick them up. It's been a pleasure as ever. It's been TAW Live. Next weekend will be done on the Friday afternoon/evening after the manager's done his press conference, because next weekend looks ahead to Manchester United. This one, though, we decided to pull it a little bit earlier, so hope you've enjoyed it. We'll see you later.